Until she came along, no one could have hurt me like she did, Clint Eastwood admits at 95 years old. The Great Depression was a part of Clint Eastwood's upbringing in San Francisco, California, where he was born Clinton Eastwood Jr. on May 31, 1930. The tenacity and work ethic that Eastwood possesses are products of his humble background. Because his father was a steelworker and migrant laborer, he spent his childhood moving around California. The virtues that would come to characterize him in real life and on screen, independence, humility, and perseverance, were ingrained in him throughout these formative years. When Eastwood was cast as Rhodey Yates in the 1950s TV Western series Rawhide, he first became famous to a large audience. From 1959 to 1965, the show aired on air and brought Eastwood his first taste of stardom. He became an indelible part of cinematic history. Nevertheless, when he shot to worldwide fame in the mid-1960s. For a little extra cash, Eastwood teamed up with Sergio Leone of Italy to act in the revolutionary Dollars trilogy, which began with A Fistful of Dollars in 1964, 1965 and 1966, respectively, had the films Good, Bad, and Ugly. The legendary Man Without a Name first appeared in these spaghetti westerns. He was a silent anti-hero whose moral ambiguity and silent power won over viewers, injecting the western with a gritty realism that stood in stark contrast to the cleaner, more conventional cowboy image of previous decades. Eastwood's portrayal revolutionized the genre. Eastwood kept developing throughout the 70s and 80s, when he was both a leading man and producer of critically and financially successful films. In 1971's Dirty Harry, he introduced another renowned character named Dirty Harry Callahan. For a generation struggling with increasing crime and frustration with authority, the image of this tough, no-nonsense San Francisco cop came to represent justice served beyond the confines of bureaucracy. Multiple sequels followed, further solidifying Eastwood's status as an unyielding action star. In addition to his acting career, Clint Eastwood became a highly acclaimed and prolific director in Hollywood. His 1971 directorial debut, Play Misty for Me, demonstrated his talent for story and his ability to create character-driven narratives that struck a chord with audiences. Unforgiven 1992, which took home the Oscars for Best Picture and Best Director, Mystic River 2003, Million Dollar Baby 2004, and American Sniper 2014, all demonstrated that this director could delve deeply and sensitively into the complexities of the human condition. A watershed moment came with Unforgiven. It provided a dark contemplation on violence, ethics, and salvation while dismantling Old West tropes. Eastwood did more than just reimagine himself in these films. He also made major strides in the development of American cinema. Includes numerous Golden Globes, Oscars, and an American Film Institute Lifetime Achievement Award. His stoicism, simple style, and calm dignity have helped him maintain a grounded demeanor despite his numerous accolades. Outside of acting, Eastwood has had a full and varied life. From 1986 to 1988, he held the office of mayor in Carmel by the Sea, California, where he has been active politically. An ardent supporter of environmental protection, a devoted father of 8, and a skilled jazz musician, Clint Eastwood's remarkableness lies in his capacity to constantly reinvent himself. Eastwood was still going strong creatively even after many of his peers had fallen out of favor. Acting, directing, and questioning cinematic conventions were all things he kept up well into his 90s. His unwavering inventiveness is on full display in his most recent pieces, such as Cry Macho, 2021. He leaves an unforgettable impression on westerns, thrillers, dramas, war films, and biopics, among other genres and generations of film. Clint Eastwood's complicated personal life, especially his many love affairs throughout the years, received as much attention as his resolute on-screen demeanor and long-lasting Hollywood presence. Because of his enigmatic charm and reticence, when it came to matters of the heart, Eastwood earned a reputation as a modern-day Casanova. He has dated a plethora of women over his life, including those in and out of the entertainment world. Actress Anita Loest, stunning Mamie Van Doren, and dancer and stuntwoman Roxanne Tunis are just a few of the famous ladies he was known to have dated or been associated with. Among his romantic partners were the renowned food critic and journalist Gail Green, and the French film icon Catherine Deneuve, whose rumored affair with Clint Eastwood dominated tabloids. While his romance with Sandra Locke received the most attention, Eastwood was also romantically involved with Jill Banner, an actress and model, Keely Smith, a seductive singer, and Jamie Rose, an aspiring star. Notable figures associated with Clint Eastwood's romantic history also include actors Susan Sain, James Inger Stevens, and Joanne Harris from Hollywood, along with activist John Seberg. In his later years, he grew close with Christina Sandra, although he was also seen with less famous ladies like Megan Rose, Jane, Bridget Byrne, and others. Despite his prominent position, Eastwood frequently chose to keep many of these interactions hidden from the public view, which further added to his aura of mystery. After meeting Maggie Johnson, a model and secretary, on a blind date earlier in 1953, Clint Eastwood married her on December 19, 1953, when he was just 23 years old. Their marriage started a new and important phase of his life. Their relationship was strained by Eastwood's early Hollywood success and the temptations that accompanied it. Despite the facade of a traditional marriage, they had 2 children of their own in the end. 2 children were born to the Eastwood family, a son, Kyle, who was born in 1968 and became a famous jazz bassist and composer, and a daughter, Allison, who was born in 1972 and became an actress and director. After 30 years of marriage, the couple divorced in 1984 due to the pressure that Eastwood's extramarital encounters had on the marriage. Reportedly one of the most costly celebrity settlements of 1984, their divorce was finalized shortly after. Johnson was expected to receive between $25 and $30 million. From 1959 to 1973, when Eastwood was still technically married to Johnson, he had a serious affair with stuntwoman and dancer Roxanne Tunis. Despite Eastwood's marriage keeping their romance under wraps, it gave birth to his daughter Kimber in 1964. Tunis was the one who raised Kimber. Not until Eastwood's extended family and personal history came under more media scrutiny. Her paternity was publicly recognized, and that was several years later. Despite the veil of secrecy, this romance was a watershed moment in Eastwood's early private life, and a precursor to his pattern of multiple relationships at once. When Eastwood began dating actress Sandra Locke in 1975, it was one of the most public and creatively significant partnerships of his life. Not only did they work together off-screen, but they also shared screen time in several of Clint Eastwood's most famous films, such as Sudden Impact, Every Which Way But Loose, Josie Wales, and The Outlaw. Locke became one of Eastwood's most notable companions throughout their 14 years of living together. Despite the closeness of their professional and sexual relationship, Eastwood apparently had multiple affairs at the same time and fathered 3 children with Locke, something that will subsequently cause tension and legal conflicts between them. After a tumultuous breakup in April 1989, Locke accused Eastwood of lying in a highly publicized court battle against one's own career. While he was an associate of Lockheed's, Eastwood had an affair with flight attendant Jocelyn Reeves. Scott Eastwood was born in 1986 and Catherine Eastwood was born in 1988 as a result of their secret affair, which they hid for a long time. Both of Reeves' children were raised by her away from the spotlight for a long period. When started acting in his own right in the 2010s, nobody really paid attention to the fact that Eastwood was his father. Since then, Scott has inherited his father's gruff charisma and is quickly climbing the Hollywood stardom ladder, just like his famous father before him. Though she has kept a lower profile than her brother, Catherine has also experimented with acting and writing. Frances Fisher, an actress who had starring parts in films and TV shows like Titanic and Unforgiven, was Eastwood's next major relationship, after his split with Sandra Locke. They dated for a while, starting in the early 90s. Francesca Eastwood, who would go on to star in her own TV show, film, and fashion line, was born to them in 1993. Although Eastwood and Fisher have remained friendly and cooperative in raising their daughter, their partnership ultimately terminated, as it had in many of his prior partnerships. Clint Eastwood wed a second time after a long and eventful marriage. He tied the knot with former TV news journalist Dina Ruiz on March 31, 1996. They were more publicly visible in their marriage than Eastwood's other partnerships. Dina frequently accompanied him to premieres and other public events. They had a daughter, Morgan Eastwood, in 1996, and she was a bit of a celebrity when she was younger. The couple's marriage appeared secure at first, but eventually, they started to drift apart. Additionally, Dina verified to the press in August 2013 that she and Eastwood were really living apart. Another chapter in the actor's dramatic love life came to a close in 2014 when they completed their divorce. At least 8 children have been born to Clint Eastwood from 6 separate marriages. Rumors have it that number could be more. In interviews and public appearances, he has typically avoided disclosing detailed details about his family and relationships, opting instead to maintain a level of discretion. His private life is even more shrouded in mystery because of his secrecy. But Eastwood is still very close to his kids, and a few of them have followed in his footsteps into show business. The public's fascination with Eastwood as a father, partner, and Hollywood star persists despite the complexity of his personal relationships. An iconic figure of American cinema, Clint Eastwood, 95 years old and famous for his unflappable hardness, near mythical stature in Hollywood, made a rare and sensitive revelation that shocked people who believed they knew the real him. In a moment of deep contemplation, the seasoned filmmaker and actor, whose life had been characterized by a plethora of love affairs, fame, and fortune, uttered only 9 evocative words. Nobody else could have the power to harm me like she could. Sandra Locke was, of course, the subject of his speech. Even after 9 decades of life, the wounds left by the woman who had been a part of his life were still too deep and too long to heal. The speaker spoke from a place of profound, almost spiritual, sorrow rather than resentment. It was as if he were going back to a part of his life he had never finished. Josie Wales, The Gauntlet, and Bronco Billy were just a few of Sandra Locke's many cinematic roles. She was both a rival and muse to Eastwood. Maybe the one and only lady who ever presented him with genuine emotional and creative challenges. When they first laid eyes on the set of Josie Wales, The Outlaw, in 1975, things changed in Eastwood. His persona had evolved beyond that of the grizzled anti-hero or the steel-eyed gunslinger. In her presence, he appeared vulnerable, almost sensitive. Their turbulent 13-year partnership was marked by passionate art cooperation, emotional instability, and, finally, a public and tragic breakdown. The litigation, the betrayals, and the quiet had left an everlasting impression on him, and no amount of achievement or time could ever be enough to erase it. "I couldn't walk after" was more than just a figure of speech or trick of phrase when Eastwood said it. He wasn't talking about a real wound, but rather to the emotional numbness that accompanied their breakup. After a life of constant change, moving sets, political interviews, award ceremonies, and directors' chairs, Locke's departure had put a halt to all of it. According to him, the split was like a collapse. He shut down emotionally and felt lost and empty afterwards. "She shattered something inside of me," he confessed to a trusted confidant, "and I've never been able to recover." It was incredible to think that a guy who had weathered the brutal Hollywood industry for more than 60 years, served in the military, directed Oscar-winning films, and garnered respect just by being himself, had once been knocked low, not by an adversary, but by a woman he loved. Even though he was only in Sandra Locke's orbit for a short while, Clint Eastwood appeared to relinquish control of his life, both on and off screen. She possessed a high intellect, a fiery personality, and a sharp tongue. Locke wasn't the type of woman who was happy to remain in his shadow, unlike many of his previous and subsequent girlfriends. With her insistence on being heard and seen, she peeled apart Clint Eastwood's facade to reveal the vulnerable man he really was. Maybe that's why she posed such a threat to him. Because of her, he experienced emotions he preferred to avoid. She prompted him to doubt his gut feelings. She caused him to pause. Eastwood frequently returns to Sandra's memory years later, when sitting alone in his Carmel mansion, encircled by photographs, screenplays, and accolades from a lifetime spent in the limelight. The discreet, snatched moments in between takes, rather than the controversy, the litigation, or the films themselves. She had a way of looking at him when no one else was there, and they would laugh. When the camera wasn't rolling, she could silence him with a look, and he would give her something honest and genuine. He said it again, this time more softly, as if saying it would make it less true. Only she could do that to me. For a man who had weathered more than a century of upheaval, strife, creativity, and romance. Neither a bullet nor treachery were the wounds that hurt Clint Eastwood the most. The woman's name was Sandra Locke. Even at the age of 95, he held her memory close, like a treasured image stashed away in his heart. A little weathered, but never discarded.